Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss the poem Dignity by Bilqis Zafirul Hasan. We will discuss about the poet first. She is a modern Urdu poet, came into poetry writing late in her life at the age of 50. We know that Urdu literature prides itself on the presence of many significant female voices in poetry. And the case of Bilqis Zafirul Hasan is an interesting one because she came to poetry, or she blossomed into a full-fledged writer only about the time when she was in her 50s and had mothered 6 children. She published 2 collections of poems, Damp Fire and Amidst the Flames. Damp Fire was published in 1996 and Amidst the Flames published in 2004. And these 2 works are published in Urdu and later it is translated into English. And a volume of short stories, The Wilderness of Flourishing Homes, came out in 2008. And the theme of her poetry discusses the issues like women identity and her status in the society. The society in the sense, the society that centers the male experience and others women and women experience. Now we will move on to the poem. The first few lines of the poem is given here. The poem examines the subjugation and oppression of women within the patriarchal system of marriage. Few lines are given here. And Bibi Sahib, my husband, would come home every night dead drunk. Then he would batter me. He wouldn't let me spend even a cent of his earnings. How could I live with such a man? I left him, left the village and came to the city. In the first few lines, the poet juxtaposes the lives of 2 women who belong to different. The poem Dignity. In the poem Dignity, the poet juxtaposes the lives of 2 women who belong to different levels in the social hierarchy, and they are trapped within the limits of their social situation. Here in the first few lines, the poet portrays the life of one of the women referred in the poem. Actually, the poor woman Dhania, the name is not specified in these lines. The Dhania is a poor woman and she is sharing her story with Bibi Sahib, who is a rich woman. And the story is that Dhania, the poor woman, is abused and beaten by her drunkard husband every day. And at a point of her life, she chooses to leave him and move to the city. And it is told that she was not allowed to spend any money that her husband earned. Come to the next part. Now I work in rich people's homes, such as yours. I earn for myself and live by my labor. What good is the vermilion in the hair part that adorns but like a wound? And in the city, she works as a servant in rich households. She earns enough money to support herself and she is leading a happy life. The financial independence gives her the courage to raise her voice. You can see a question here. The speaker is asking a question here. See, what good is the vermilion in the hair part that adorns but like a wound? In these lines, she boldly asks, the sindoor, means the sindoor, vermilion refers to the sindoor. The sindoor in general it is seen as a sign of marital status. Okay. But for Dhania, this poor woman, she consider it as a sign of the physical violence by her husband, because she had a married life of physical violence from her husband. Therefore, for her, sindoor is a sign of the reminder of ill treatment from her husband. She considers it as a wound. One is not born but rather becomes a woman. Simone de Beauvoir in The Second Sex. Simone de Beauvoir in her work The Second Sex, she argues that one is not born but rather becomes a woman. It means that the identity of a woman lies not within her biological limits, but it is constructed by the social and cultural condition of the society where she lives in. And in these lines, we can understand her husband's attitude and behavior. In general, it is told that feminists says that the husbands, the males, the men's attitude and behavior lies in the misconception that women are the weaker sex. We will move on to the next part. Now, how could the Bibi Sahib explain to Dhania that her story was not one of a kind, that she too endures something similar day after day, night after night, but unluckily she is not Dhania, she is Bibi Sahib, and this status has been of one's own. And this status has been given to her in reward by her husband. One who has no status of one's own must live on charity alone. Okay, now we will get the picture of the second woman in the poem. Here it is told that the second woman in the poem is silenced by the internalization of the patriarchal norms of a woman's position and status within the institution of marriage. Here the story of Bibi Sahib is not different. Okay, she is also married to a man who abuses her physically every day and night, but she stays within the marriage. Okay, whereas Dhania came out of the marriage, came out of the institution of marriage, whereas this lady Bibi Sahib, she stays within the marriage as she internalized the patriarchal norm that women are weak and need a man to survive. They always have to, women always have to depend on the man. The poem illustrates the principle of the double marginalization experienced by Indian women in terms of gender and class. The juxtaposition of the two women contrasts their differing attitude to marriage and husbands. We know in the poem Dhania, the maid, is the subaltern. Okay, Dhania is marginalized twice, okay, as a woman and as a person who belongs to the lower class in the society. She is a representative of a subaltern. In the poem Dhania, the maid is a subaltern who speaks for herself. She also acts as a spokesperson for the other woman, Bibi Sahib. But Bibi Sahib is silenced by her internalization of the patriarchal norms. And we can see here, one rejects the institution and walks out of the institution of marriage, and the other accepts everything and suffer silently. And the second one, the other woman, Bibi Sahib, believes that the status as a man's wife is a tip of her husband. Okay, she considers marriage as a divine or something she have to carry throughout her life. The dignity she attains by living with her husband, can a woman hope to find it elsewhere? Now we will move on to the next part. The dignity she attains by living with her husband. Can a woman hope to find it elsewhere, anywhere? Feeling the gash on her forehead as she speaks. Dhania, you shouldn't have left your husband and walked away. Okay. These lines refers to the androcentric ideology that a woman's sense of self is related to her marital status. Okay. We have already discussed the attitude of the second woman, Bibi Sahib. That is, she accepts everything in her marriage, and she also advises the other woman, the maid Dhania, to accept everything. It is not right to leave your husband. And she believes in the androcentric ideology that woman's sense of self is related to her marital status. Last part of the poem. Self-respect is something, but how should Dhania make Bibi Sahib understand this? Okay, here Dhania symbolizes women who choose to remain outside the institution of patriarchy and challenge its accepted notions. She becomes the voice of feminism, and she tries to make women like her, for example, Bibi Sahib, that she tries to make her understand that her dignity, pride, self-esteem, self-respect, self-worth, whatever it is something that lies not in her social status as wife or mother, but within herself. Bilqis Zafirul Hasan in this poem illustrates the principle of the double marginalization experienced by Indian women in terms of gender and class. The two women protagonists, Dhania and Bibi Sahib, are examples of women in a patriarchal society that seeks to place women in a position subservient. The two women protagonists, Dhania and Bibi Sahib, are examples of women in a patriarchal society that seeks to place women in a position subservient to and dependent on men. Within a patriarchal society, like a family, she is to obey the father, brother, or an elder male relative, and is referred to as someone's daughter or sister or niece. Patriarchy seeks to silence and exclude women as the other, reduce them to weak, dependent begins and convince. Patriarchy seeks to silence and exclude women as the other, reduce them to weak, dependent, and convince them of this notion. In such situations, Dhania, the maid, the representative of the lower class or a subaltern, becomes the voice of feminism. She speaks for herself and for other women like her.